Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in today. I'm Nicole Forbes with Dennis's 70s, and today we're talking about spring and summer container combinations, and doing this and even just pulling together the plants from the amazing selection that we have in this kind of peak of the season at the garden centers. I just ran through and picked out the most beautiful things that appealed to me. And now it's sort of like having a big pile of clothes and accessories, and you're gonna like put together outfits. Now, I would not have nearly as much fun dressing myself or anyone else than I would putting together container combinations, but I get it. I guess this is like fashion to me, and I can understand where people have a lot of fun, putting together outfits. So there's a few things, like, I don't know, basics to get out of the way, and then we can just really start looking at combinations and pretty plants, and have some fun just talking about how they look together. A couple of basics include, the container itself, what you're planting in, what size it is, what it's made of, and the material that goes inside of it, the soil itself, and then the fertilizer too. So choosing your container size matters. I mean, it's possible to plant up those, tiny, like Mexican terracotta pots that you brought home on your last vacation. But if they're small containers, small enough to hold in your hand, they really, first of all, they can't hold a combination of plants. It's going to most likely be a single plant in there. And the smaller the pot, the less room there is to hold soil and moisture. And so better to choose a plant that is really thrifty and used to growing with limited soil and limited moisture. And that would be most likely, potted succulents, for example. So, really small, low, shallow bowls, especially like a shallow clay bowl, such as this one here. This is glazed on the outside, which gives us a little bit more water holding than if it were a rough terracotta unglazed pot. But really, we're looking at maybe 6-7 inches across and not even 3 inches deep. The plant that I have here, this little echeveria, is actually just barely tall enough, or barely shallow enough, I guess, to fit into this pot. We may even have to pull a little bit of the soil off the bottom, but once that sat in there, it would almost fill the container. We could surround it with some pretty rocks, maybe a little pretty pebbles or something. And this guy happens to be just about to bloom with the cutest little flowers. So I picked it out because, of course, it's doing something extraordinary. But when it finishes blooming, it'll just be this chunky little rosette that's kind of that pretty powdery blue, which brings in I don't know if you can see kind of the blue-gray of the pot itself. And all we can do is one plant in that size container. We might be able to stretch 3 succulents into, I don't know what this is, maybe a 10-inch container. So I have definitely crammed them in, and we know that they're going to grow, but as succulents grow, they can kind of spill out of the pot and get out of each other's way. So as long as you've got a nice sunny spot, and don't completely forget to water them, but give them a nice, fast draining soil, treat them like arid succulent type plants. This would be a pretty combination that's going to last you till frost. There's still annual succulents in here, but really, again, such a small container is not enough space to provide long-term habitat for plants that are going to live beyond a single season. So using annuals in those smaller containers is also just more practical than trying to put in something that's going to live year after year. We ideally would like to see, containers in the size of like 14 to 18 inch diameter, which is usually about as tall as they are. And I've got examples of, this is a 14-inch container with a nice, that gives us ample space to make a nice combination of plants in here. In fact, if I count them out, there's the center plant was a 1 gallon, so a 6-inch, the largest of the container sizes. So that's one big one. And then we have 2, 3, 4, 5 total plants in here. They were all probably quart size, so a little bit bigger than a 4-inch plant to get it started. And that's enough that we still have a little bit of space between the plants, but as they fill out on a 14-inch container, this is going to give us a really full looking plant that's not overly crowded at the same time. Now, again, just to give examples, there's our 14-inch container, 12-inch, 10-inch, right? Yes, 12-inch, 10-inch. And then we've got a 16-inch here that I'm going to show the red banana in. And really on something like a large plant like red banana, I would say a 16-inch container is like minimum size, considering that the plant itself can grow like 6, 8 feet or more in a single season. So the bigger the pot, the bigger it'll grow, and that's more dramatic. But so each of these container sizes limits us to the combination of plants that we can use in there. If I have, what did I say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever, 6 plants in a 14-inch, here on our 10-inch pot, well, if we put in a 1 gallon size plant, we are already really limited in what else is going to fit in there. We just don't have a lot of extra planting space, and it's a good size for now, but if this plant grows a little bit more, it's going to kind of outscale the size of the pot itself. So choosing with a 10-inch size container, choosing a shorter centerpiece plant is going to give you a better look in the first place. And because the pot is low, you don't need anything terribly tall anyways. So we can go with something just for fun. Let's look at one of these bonfire begonias. We could fit one begonia and still do, that would be our thriller. We'll get into this just a little bit more. Begonia would be our thriller. Then we could use something like, what? Filler. Oh, this could be a fun filler. So this is a licorice plant, the helichrysum, and that gives us some nice foliage. Oh, gives us some nice foliage to play with, because in a small pot like this, we may not want to just like slam it full of flowers. So we've got our bonfire begonia, or it's actually called mistral orange, the helichrysum, and then adding one flower, one more flower element to this. We could throw in a nemesia, such as this, which would give us that instant pop of color, or a more strict trailing plant. Since this is orange, we could do a purple. So here's a trailing plant. This is Million Bells. And Million Bells is going to just cascade over the edge and probably almost all the way down to the bottom. So Mistral Orange Begonia, which is actually a sun or shade begonia, the Lemon Lime Helichrysum, and then this is a Midnight Blue Million Bells, would be a perfect combination for spiller, filler, thriller in a 10-inch size container. But again, like I said, it starts to limit us in what we can throw together. So when you want to add more plants and have a bigger, fuller look, going to that 12-inch, 14-inch, or even 16-inch size container is going to give you more space to play with. Now, obviously, as I mentioned, also what the pot is made of can have an impact in how well draining it is, how much you need to water it. And so plastic pots are probably the most water holding, and glazed ceramic containers also hold a lot of water. But we find things like hanging baskets, hay racks, that have like the cocoa fiber, wooden boxes, all of those, and the unglazed, like the rough unglazed ceramic containers, like a terracotta pot. all tend to dry out a little bit faster because the water can evaporate through the sides of the plant, of the pot. Now, last thing I guess to mention on shapes and sizes of containers, two things. One is those pots that go in at the top. So they could kind of look like an urn. They may have a wider shoulder and then they narrow at the very opening of the container. Those are really difficult. They're beautiful pots and I'm definitely attracted to that shape, but they are very hard to plant in because, as you can imagine, when you put a plant in there, then you're adding soil into this wider shoulder and you can't actually pull it back out of the opening because now it's bigger below the opening of the container. So you usually have to pretty much destroy any plant that is grown inside a pot where the opening is smaller than the shoulders themselves. So consider that. And then the other thing about those type of tall, narrow containers is that the types of pots that are tall and tapered, maybe tall, tapered, and square, for example, if we put something in there that's also fairly tall, it can catch the wind and tip that pot right over. So we want to make sure that they are well balanced, that the container may have, you know, maybe an anchor of support if you have to strap it to something, if it's up on a deck that gets a lot of wind. And often people on those taller pots want to put less soil in the pot. So put, you know, sometimes we want to add filler to the bottom, but on those pots that might already be top heavy and tip over, put soil, even, you know, like the round thing on a weight thing, dumbbell, that would help me. Something like that, one of those round weight things, weight the bottom, you know, or add a jug of sand into the bottom or something so that you know you've got an extra stability on those pots, and don't use filler for the bottom, soil all the way down. Struggle with that. Obviously, I don't lift weights, I lift plants, and so that's why I'm so buff anyways. Now, as usual, and I skip ahead always and then backtrack for a second, there's a handout. It's got a lot of details. It's got plants listed out as suggested plants for thrillers, fillers, and spillers, whether it's sun or shade. A lot of those plants are here on the table today, and I'll be talking about a lot of them. But to be honest, like I said, it's a run through the nursery at the spur of the moment and pick what is beautiful kind of exercise that I do on a class day like this. So there may be things on the table that are not on your list. If you have questions and you need us to you know, spell it or tell you what it is, just make a comment and we'll make sure to give you the further details, or come in and shop with us. We can help you put together some fun plant combinations, and hopefully this is going to be inspiring enough to, you know, make you want to do that. Doesn't matter what the weather is. When it's raining and crummy outside, you could lay a tarp on your dining room table, probably also underneath the dining room table, and pot away the day in your, you know, jammies or whatever. Let the rain fall and do all your planting inside. Or you could plant up your containers on the covered porch or covered deck in your garage, for example, in an area where you don't necessarily have to be all the way out in the elements. And it's smart to even kind of keep your freshly planted container just a little bit protected while we're still in. I mean, normally we would say, well, we're past our last frost date and everything's good to go, but this is a weird year and we are still way chillier and wetter than we normally are, or have been recently at least, by this time of the season. So it's not a bad idea on something like this amazing, like pristine, tropical red banana. Right now it doesn't have a blemish or a broken leaf or anything. And just a day out in a little windstorm, or God forbid, some hail that still occasionally happens. This plant would just get kind of wrecked up. So not a bad idea. Right now we have them in our greenhouse. They've just arrived. If you've been waiting for a red banana and you're watching, hustle down. This video will be recorded. So come on down and watch the video later because they sell fast. The areas close to your house, on either side of your door, on that front or back porch, like I said, those are already kind of sheltered or protected spaces. So starting there makes a lot of sense. And as the season warms up, work your way further out into the garden, doing plantings, all the way out to the curb if you want to. So style, I mean, again, just like putting an outfit together, there's a million styles. There's however you choose your favorite color. Go with texture, drama, monochromatic, all kind of one color. Maybe it's all a peaceful, green and white theme, for example, or you have lots of pink and yellows, whatever, again, your theme is, and style. It also needs to take your sun exposure into consideration. So whether or not you have 6 or more hours of sun, which would be considered full sun plants, or like 4 to 6 hours of sun, whether that's even like 2 or 3 in the morning, 2 or 3 in the afternoon, 4 to 6 hours of sun is that part sun area, or what we would, consider if a plant can take part sun to shade or sun to part sun. 4 to 6 is still part sun. 4 hours or less than 4 hours is really what we would consider shade. And morning sun in general, so if your door faces the east and you're getting morning sun on your front porch, but shaded by the afternoon, you will be fine with plants that are part sun tolerant. But if your front porch faces west or southwest and gets just the blazing hot afternoon sun, remember that, if you're going to put containers on the porch, they're going to be up against kind of usually the side of the house or the decking, and that can radiate extra heat back on the plant. So it could be a really hot, dry space for them if they're facing the west. So choosing plants that will be okay with that kind of exposure, that may be more resilient to drying out between waterings, because let's face it, containers, are all dependent on us to feed them, to water them, to, take care of them. That's one of the things that, is our kind of obligation when we deal with container plantings. But again, that's the fun part. So choosing wisely and choosing your combinations. I mean, it's easy to put one plant in and say this plant likes sun or this plant likes shade, but now we need to find plants that look together good, grow well together, and are going to like the similar experiences or exposure. So you will get, again, the kind of deeper instructions on some of this in the handout. But we also always want to use quality potting soil. So we here prefer, in almost all generic, especially outdoor container applications, we love the Garden and Bloom or G&B, just all-purpose indoor-outdoor potting soil. It has a nutrient package, so it does deliver a little bit of water-soluble nutrient to the plant. It's got decent water holding capability, but also has enough pumice and perlite to be well draining. It's possibly a little bit more moisture than a succulent or cactus would like, but there is a cactus planting mix that is more appropriate for them anyways. So choosing just kind of your average bedding plants, whether they be sun or shade plants, the GMB potting soil is fantastic. And in addition, like I mentioned, there's a little nutrient package in the potting soil that's more water soluble, kind of ready to go and get the plants adjusted into their new home with a little meal, right? But the long-term feed on the plants is going to come from fertilizer that you put into the container planting. Fertilizer, what we like to use and advocate, are slow release or time release fertilizers. And because they are slower release or time release, they are in most cases able to be put down in the planting and even in contact with the actual roots themselves. So you kind of add a layer of soil to the bottom of your container, maybe the bottom third or so, then sprinkle that with the appropriate amount of fertilizer according to the package or the label. Then start, mix it up a little bit if you want, then start placing your plants and adding soil as you fill the container. You can go ahead and lightly add a top dressing of fertilizer, granular, after you finish potting, just to put it onto the top. As you water, that fertilizer is going to start breaking down and working its way down into the soil. The two that we prefer to use, or that are the easiest to use fertilizer-wise, for organic, all natural, this is a all-purpose pelletized blend from G&B called Paradise Blend. This has the beneficial mycorrhizae in it. It is 555, so just like basic all-purpose, slow release, and like I said, organic. And then the synthetic fertilizer that is slow release and great for containers is Osmocote. And Osmocote in the green cap, green label is all-purpose again. It's triple 14, so numbers 14, 14, 14. It is a 4-month long feeding, so slowly releases fertilizer for basically almost the whole growing season. So 4 months, you can put it in as you're planting. You can feed after the fact. So if you buy a hanging basket, for example, this is a great product to toss a handful or so, according to the label, into a hanging basket to give it that longer, slower, longer feeding instead of constantly giving it just like Miracle-Gro or a liquid feed. Now, last about fertilizer. I know we're going to talk about plants. This is liquid fertilizer. And liquid fertilizer, there's lots of brands. Again, we do like the organics. This is G&B All-Purpose 323. The liquid fertilizer is liquid now. Sometimes it's powder added to water to dilute to a certain dilution rate according to label, and then given to your plant in liquid form. Liquid fertilizer is like an immediate delivery of nutrition to the plant. So as the slow release or long feed fertilizer like Osmocote or Paradise can feed for 6 weeks or up to 4 months on the Osmocote, this is an immediate water-soluble delivery of nutrition for a plant while it's waiting for the longer, slower released stuff to kick in. Especially in the peak of summer when we're watering our plants a lot, they're actively and rapidly growing and flowering. Not a bad idea to give them a little extra fertilizer with the liquid feed, even though they may already have that granular fertilizer in there. It's kind of, as I think of it, on a busy day, having like an extra cup of coffee in the afternoon to supplement just like the basic meals that I have to keep my energy level high. So quality potting soil, fertilizing, and then there are some basic maintenance once the containers are planted that we'll kind of touch on at the end. But combinations. So as I mentioned, we like to combine plants together so that as they grow through the months of the season, here it is mid-April, right? So we have May, June, July, August, at least 4 months, possibly even September. Almost a lot of plants will start still looking pretty, they'll go into early and sometimes late October. So 4 to 6 months that we have of growth that these plants will be putting on between now and when we pot them and when they kind of finish their season. And let's face it, most of these are annuals, which gives us the fastest growth, the longest flowering time, and that's kind of great for showy feature points or focal points in your garden. Perennials are great for kind of more understated containers, but there's nothing like an annual to just bloom its little head off And so when it blooms its head off, that means that it dies when its head finally blooms off, I guess. So, annuals, they die in the end of the season. Sometimes in a mild winter, they carry over from year to year. You just consider yourself lucky. If you have a greenhouse or do some special things, some of these annuals you can carry over from year to year as well. But most of us just treat it kind of like, a well-spent dinner out, or whatever the equivalent would be in cost, and enjoy it through the summer. So thrillers, fillers, and spillers, as I mentioned, is the kind of terminology that we refer to give you an idea of growth habits. And the growth habits are different enough that a thriller is up and out, kind of a centerpiece plant. Usually a thriller is either tall enough that we can put an understory planting underneath it, like the banana or this Fatsia japonica, the Japanese Aurelia, or a thriller is narrow at the base, and so we can still tuck in a layer of filler plants in that narrow space, and then really the majority of the plant is up and out of the way of those other plants in the container. So thrillers, often there's just one, usually the tallest plant in the container. And then fillers are that middle layer. And thrillers are sometimes just foliage. So a thriller can kind of give you that statement that then helps you put together the rest of the container by what flowers may complement the thriller that you've chosen. So, grassy thrillers such as both of these are cordylines. This is Red Star and this guy is Torbay Dazzler. Cordylines are sort of grassy. Often they are evergreen. They make it through our mild winters, no problem. But a little bit of that kind of modern, airy, kind of Mediterranean / tropical look and feel to them. Fun for full sun to partial sun on, but not into shade on the cordyline. Great, another great thriller that does not look anything like it's going to within the next couple of weeks as it starts to put on growth. This is our giant papyrus. So this is King Tut giant papyrus, and we're looking at 48 to 72 inches. So that is like, 4 to 6 feet. Big plant with big pom-poms of kind of airy, grassy, whimsical Dr. Seuss-like looking heads on the top. This is again for your 16-inch size container or bigger, because we're talking about a plant that could get 4 to 6 feet tall. So we really need it to have something to make its statement in when it is that big and grandiose. But King Tut papyrus, there's a dwarf papyrus as well. So King Tut, I think it's Prince Tut or Baby Tut or something like that. So if you're looking at papyrus for your centerpiece, there are some different scales to work with different size containers. Japanese Aurelia, as I mentioned, Fatsia japonica. This is a great tropical looking plant with these shiny, bold leaves for shade. This is actually an evergreen with some protection. It benefits from protection in the winter, but parts under shade. Excellent in pots because it is really quite drought tolerant. Can grow to be a fairly large plant, but you can prune it easily, and it continually puts on kind of new growth towards the base. So we can see as it gets a little bit larger how it fills out the pot. But even, if you have a lot of shade, you may find a great place for this in the landscape once it gets larger. So for more permanent, perennials or trees and shrubs, if you start out with them in your container planting as the centerpiece or thriller, maybe you enjoy them in there for a year or two. And if they outscale the planting over time, then you can take them and plant them in the garden somewhere and find either start over again with the new one or find something new to add into the container planting. So fun, more evergreen or permanent for shade, the Japanese Aurelia. Another annual thriller for shade, this is an upright fuchsia, and this happens to be Gartenmeister, which is like super old-fashioned, but Really tried and true, just such a popular upright fuchsia. Gorgeous kind of olive green foliage with these burgundy margins, and then a burgundy stem and like this kind of purple burgundy undersides of the leaves. And then it makes a flower on top of that. Little tubular kind of orangey apricot flares of flowers that hummingbirds go bonkers over. So you've got this gorgeous flowering upright fuchsia for shade. It is, like I mentioned, an annual, and it's going to end up at about 18 to 24 inches tall. This makes a nice centerpiece statement and blooms later into that. Well, it's going to get close to bloom, but it's going to bloom on into late summer and into fall. Over here, as I mentioned, my tropical red banana. This can be a massive plant. So in a big container, and if it had a couple of seasons to grow, it could get up to 20 feet tall. We have had them grown probably starting in a 2-gallon pot like this one is here. Put them in our big street planters that are like 3 feet tall and probably a good 2 feet across. And we've seen them easily get to 8 feet or more in a single season. So sort of like a goldfish, the bigger the pot, the bigger it's going to get. But because they are annuals and they will die in the frost if they aren't put into a warm greenhouse, there's really a limit to what they're going to get in a single season. I think I have like a 20-inch container that I typically plant one in out on my back deck, and it gets up to like 6 feet or so in a season. But I often start with it, even younger. So starting with a gallon-sized container and watching it kind of dramatically grow is always really fun. So last thriller that's on my table is this kind of tender fuchsia. So this is, not fuchsia, salvia. This is a salvia called Wendy's Wish. Wendy's Wish is kind of in the same series as, there's Ember's Wish, which is kind of more of an orangey than this pinky purple. But black and blue salvia, a lot of us are familiar with, that large flower, big wand of blooms on an upright plant, fairly robust and long blooming into the summer. Sun, heat, and fairly drought tolerant. Literally blooms from, like I said, late spring into fall. Hummingbirds love them. This guy here gets 2 to 3 feet tall. So, it's maybe 18 inches now. So twice its size, and definitely also almost as wide, with just at the ends of every branch, these pendulous kind of blush flower bracts that open up with this like hot pink magenta salvia bloom in the throughout the season. And as I mentioned, hummingbirds also go nuts for this Wendy's Wish salvia. So thrillers, right? Fillers, if thrillers are mostly foliage, fillers can be either or. And fillers, really like a perfect example of a filler would be this little brachycomb. This is radiant magenta brachycomb. Looks sweet. We could put it with the red star cordyline to really bring out all of those burgundy hues. But then if we have these kind of monochromatic colors, oh yeah, I've got a mushroom in here because, sometimes container plantings just don't have enough color in the beginning. So you can always throw in something like a colorful mushroom to give you some extra bling. And then as your container planting fills out, you may have to remove the mushroom as you can't see it anymore or something. But so if we're going with kind of monochromatic, we've got our red star cordyline. We're adding in the brachycomb. Then to cool it down a little bit, it would be nice to throw in something that's either got like a lime or a chartreuse. I'm a total sucker for this tricolor geranium. So although it's still foliage, this is a fancy leaf geranium, so it does make a flower. This is tricolor, and its flower is sort of bleh. It's like a pale pink. It's not, it's gonna kind of clash with this magenta-y color. So when it blooms, I might just pinch the flower off. I know that that's probably crazy, but the rest of the plant is just a great combo with the red star cordyline, which has that fine, you know, grassy, bladey texture. Then we add this bigger, bolder leaf of the tricolor geranium, and then that whimsical bloom of the radiant magenta, which we could even, starts to be hard here. We're gonna add another. And of course we could put another geranium on the other side, or if that's too much rust, too much burgundy, instead we could use a coleus. Now this is electric lime coleus, great combo as well, nice bold leaf, and that chartreuse not only contrasts great against the cordyline, but brings out the little kind of limey golden centers on the brachycomb flowers. Or another fancy leaf geranium. Gotta get a close-up of this one. This is crocodile. So crocodile goes back to our putting our outfits together. This is our like alligator skin shoes or purse or whatever. Crocodile is gorgeous foliage with a sort of an ivy geranium growth habit. So it's upright, but it's a little bit sprawly. There is a flower on crocodile. It's kind of a bright pink, which would be fine with the magenta of the brachycomb. And that's another nice, it's a little bit more of a subtle contrast than the kind of in your face of the tricolor geranium. Sometimes in your face is fine, but it's all about your style, right? So fun to add those guys. And then if we really wanted to kind of go all out, we now need a spiller. And we could either, let's see, let's go back to, I'm in your face today at least. So here is our three. And now what I would like to do, come on everybody, is add a trailing plant. And the spiller could either be something like a potato vine. So we could use a complementary color of potato vine to the cordyline, and that'll spill over the edge of the container, really shows off kind of the drama of our color combinations. Or we could go back to something very simple, like, what did I show, potato vine? Something simple like a, could be really cute, whoa, to add something cheery, like a million bells. Let's get back here where you can kind of see what's going on. So this is a yellow million bells. This is Mini Famous Uno Yellow. And that could just spill over the edge of the container, just giving us like a little floral bonanza down the center of the pot. So spiller, fillers, thriller, all for sun or partial sun. Now, I love to use plants that don't require a ton of maintenance. So, you know, it's fun to go out and look at the plants or even look at them from inside the house as long as they're always looking good. But if as you're looking at them and you are just constantly seeing like flowers that need to be removed or wish it were doing better and you have to go out there and spruce it up or fix it up, those are not my favorite plants. Foliage is another reason why I love foliage, is that we're not waiting for it to kind of come in and out of peak bloom or peak flower, and the combinations that foliage offer can really highlight and emphasize the colors of the plants, the flowers that we use. So coleus, as I mentioned before, coleus is one of those primary foliage plants that has been, I'm not going to say improved upon over the last few years, but breeders have made coleus so that many of the varieties of coleus are able to take sun or shade. So this is campfire coleus, which is, I have to say, probably one of my favorites. I mean, it's like electric, whatever that color is. It's a lot of colors, like a campfire. Almost has like a violet center. As the foliage grows, it's going to take on sort of more orangey colors. Now, this is a part sun, so not too hot, but not too cold or not too shady coleus, and this can grow 14 to 28 inches tall. So really be quite a statement. Even be a thriller in your pot would be the campfire coleus. And in addition, campfire, here's Gaze Delight. Gaze Delight is a full sun to shade coleus. By the way, coleus are deer resistant. So for those of you that are struggling with deer in your gardens, coleus can help out there. So Gaze Delight, and Gaze Delight is a little bit shorter, 18 inches tall. So another nice one for a lower, but 18 inches, that's still pretty tall for a pot. Electric lime we showed off earlier. And here's Coleosaurus. Coleosaurus, not a joke. This is a big growing coleus. We're looking at 24 to 36 inches tall and space them 2 feet apart. So Coleosaurus can get 3 feet, a giant plant, be a gorgeous focal point or thriller. It would look amazing with my hardy banana, or excuse me, not hardy banana, with my tropical red banana with that lime green to give us a contrast against the darker burgundy foliage. And even though, like I said, yeah, coleus flower, that's another one of those that's not what they're all about. Sometimes I pinch the flowers out. Coleus is one of those that you can combine with just about any color and really kind of bring out the beauty of the flowers themselves. Because flowers stacked onto flowers, they all start to kind of compete with one another. So if Coleosaurus gets 3 feet tall, just bear with me and we'll do an exercise here. This could be our thriller. And Coleosaurus is another one that is part sun. So part sun to shade. Coleosaurus, add another one of my just kind of favorites, these Million Bells or Calibrachoa. I just showed you this cute yellow one. That would also be cute in there with it, but I think that it's fun to go with the drama of the contrast. So we've got that magenta, pulling kind of the magenta of the center of the coleus. So our thriller, our spiller, and then if we wanted a filler in this particular design, gosh, we have lots of options to go for. We could pull an orange into the combination, and that really kind of heats up the whole planting. And of course, as these all grow together, remember the coleus will get larger. This Nemesia, this is a Nemesia called Nessa Tropical. And then this rose Million Bells would spill over the container. So we would have our filler, thriller, filler, spiller as they sort of take shape. Right now, they're all similar size because, well, they're all young plantings. So you have to kind of read the tags, have a vision. And because these all grow pretty fast, as the weather warms up and the season comes on, everything's going to happen pretty quickly. So coleus and how to kind of have fun and play and build with coleus. Now, Million Bells of all of these fun colors that I'm showing off. The yellow, it's just Uno yellow. Rose, I just showed you. Here is the midnight blue. Beautiful, bright, brilliant colors. These are basically like a trailing petunia. So similar to our bigger petunias, trailing petunias, so they cascade over. They're great in pots and hanging baskets, but they can also be grown in the ground. And the neatest thing about these petunias or calibrachoas is that they are self-cleaning. And self-cleaning means that as the flower finishes, so here we have like a done flower. It's sort of brown looking in the middle. Its petals have shriveled up. And the next thing that's going to happen is the whole stem that the flower is attached to is going to just magically detach from the plant and fall off. Now, if it didn't do that, then we as gardeners are supposed to or encouraged to go in and individually deadhead or remove the spent flowers to encourage the plant to repeat blooming and prevent it from producing a bunch of seeds. And that is the maintenance that's required more on the standard style of petunia that we're a little bit more used to. Now, this guy is far from standard, but I wanted to show this off not only as what a fun and cool color combination, but this is just one of more of the types of petunias that require us to get in and physically remove those faded flowers, called deadheading, and that has to be done by going in either with your fingers or pruners, scissors, and snipping the spent flower off. But this is Night Sky, Headliner Night Sky, which is kind of a spreading style petunia. Sometimes coworkers and I refer to this as the bird poop petunia, lovingly, because it is so dazzling. It has a light fragrance as well, so you've got that going for you. But the larger flower, it's spreading, a little bit trailing, and you would want to go in pretty often and deadhead. So here we see a bloom that is finished. It didn't turn tan like the little petunia did, but it's shriveled up and it's starting to sag and look faded. So I'm not going to just pull that flower part off. You can see it's attached to a longer stem that comes, it's actually going to come up, well, so that is not what you do. You pull the whole thing off. Usually I go in and actually pinch it out with my fingertips. It just happened to bend off and come off nicely. But this entire portion of the flower is the flower and the flower seed and the petals themselves. So all of that needs to be removed when you deadhead. Now, similar to coleus and how they are being created more for wider applications, so sun or shade, begonias are similarly being showcased. So not only I showed you the Mistral orange, so here's Mistral orange and Mistral orange's counterpart. This is Mistral dark red. These are upright begonias with sort of like a flared tubular bloom, different from a non-stop begonia with these big, roughly, camellia or rose-like blooms. Upright, taller in general, kind of a different looking leaf as well. And we're talking about 10 to 12 inches tall. These are easy to grow and are tolerant of part sun or shade. I've definitely pushed these into probably more sun than they would like, and they get a little bit bleached out or burnt on the top. But depending on your thriller, if you've got a thriller that is big and has bold leaves such as the hardy banana, an underplanting on a thriller to a certain extent actually may have some partial shade from the plant above it. So I've used it in that hardy banana or the red banana combination and found that the banana does provide some nice shade. Not the hottest of sun, but part shade to shade on these upright Mistral begonias. There's also a Mistral pink that I just didn't bring in today. And then this absolutely gorgeous begonia is one of the Solenia series. So Solenia, S-O-L-E-N-I-A, Solenia begonias, they really get like 8 to 12 inches tall. This is, the bloom still not quite as big as the nonstop, which is kind of like our grandparents' like gold standard of begonia, right? Is the nonstop begonia. Solenia is a little bit smaller bloom, but a bunch of them, right? Upright but semi-cascading because of these big flowers. It just can't even really hold itself up. And Solenia begonias, as the name sort of indicates, are sun or shade begonias. And I think that that's marvelous because I love begonias and I find them to be really easy care, low pest issues, low disease issues. They, in most cases, begonias are pretty thrifty with water. They've got kind of a fleshy, thicker leaf, so they hold moisture on their own and don't seem to need constant watering like a lot of other plants do. Plus, the more shade you're in, the less watering you would have to do on your plants. And this is apricot. So the Solaria begonias come in a lot of different colors. Clearly, I'm a sucker for like the orange or orange pink combos. And so that's the one that gravitated into my view today. But just the same, I put together a container planting. Well, so, okay, here's two dramatically different examples of combinations, both on the monochromatic theme, because that's easy. It's easier than, it's easy to kind of find like colors than it is to find complementary or contrasting colors in many cases. But again, in your face, saucy combination for full sun and hummingbirds. If we start with our Wendy's Wish salvia, which again, remember, gets up to 3 feet tall, we would want this in at least a 14-inch container, better to be 16-inch or even bigger. Then we could complement the colors of the stems and the flower bracts themselves with an African daisy that's blooming now to give us like now, fullness in flowers now. And I emphasize now because, well, A, none of us really like to wait for things to come to season. Second, B, this season has already kind of put us behind, it seems, so we're planting things kind of late. If you're having a party this weekend, or if you do your containers to have a party, which, amen for parties, for making us, clean the house and get a new doormat and all the things that we do when we're sprucing up for parties, you want color right away. Now, this African daisy may not bloom all the way until frost. It may not go through the entire summer like the rest of the container planting does, or will, and that is fine. If it goes out of bloom, there's lots of other plants that I can choose that will be blooming later in the season, but this is giving me color now. So I can put it in now, and when it's no longer, favorable contribution to the pot, pull it out and replace it with something else. I mean, might I say, we could even just do something like the solar begonia, gorgeous to put that apricot with these deep, whatever colors these are, pink purple. But again, we want to keep going crazy monochromatic. We could just go nuts with brachycomb. And I like to give us a contrast of chartreuse. And one I haven't talked too much about is the margarita potato vine. Oh, so popular. This plant, yeah, Becky? Becky's like, yeah, that's it. Becky's in your face too today. So this is a chartreuse spilling plant that is gonna like hit the floor and be at that bold, dramatic foliage statement that, because all of the rest of these are so floral and in your face, this gives us like a mat, a place for your eyes to rest and really showcase the flowers around them. Now, like I said, this is like hot pink on the, out on the town, bright sun, cheery color. But you could do the same type of fullness and impact and beauty. And this, by the way, is African daisy called Flower Power Compact Purple Red. That's a total cheat right there. You can't say purple red. Anyways, same idea. I'm going to shift over here, Becky. But with our hardy banana and more of a dramatic, monochromatic theme. So here we have, this is going to be kind of like cool and relaxing. And one of the other things about this container, we're using all like whites and silver whites with this just amazing red banana as our focal point. But that then gives us the dark as the stem of the red banana gets fatter and more colorful. The stem is going to give us that dark contrast to really showcase the lighter colored plants against. So for the monochromatic, again, fancy word for one color, right? So we've chosen this kind of silver white theme. And the neat thing about this combo would be how you would really see this plant combination glow at night. So with a moon, with lighting perhaps, during the dark, the banana would probably disappear some, but all of the whites and silvers would just be picked up by moonlight or by your landscape lighting and really show off the colors. Now, as I mentioned, so we've got a 16-inch container, which is about minimum size for a big banana to get nice and big. And as a contrasting bold leaf, we need some bold leaves to hold up against the banana. So this is one of our favorite container plant combination foliage applications. This is Angel Wings Senecio. It's sort of succulent. It's got a thick fleshy leaf. It is covered in these fine silvery white hairs that make it soft and petable like a little puppy's ear. That adds that like you want to go in and touch it kind of element to the container planting, which is fun. You get a whole nother sense. You know, it's like smell it, feel it, listen to it, like bamboo rustling. Actually, bananas make this weird kind of squeaky sound as they move. So there's sound on the banana. But Senecio Angel's Wings would give us that front and center kind of focal point to land our eye, this great big banana, and then bring us down to the floral layer where we have Senecio Angel's Wings. This is a tender perennial, hardy to zone 9, so but it is going to grow and fill in as the summer comes along. Just going with that nice white theme, our spiller is the classic Bacopa. And so Bacopa would give us the trailing down the side of our container, just a nice crisp white with the deep green leaf. So we can throw Bacopa in on either side of the Angel's Wings. I know that's a little low, but here it would be at the edge and spilling over as we go. And as the banana grows up, we'll have more clearance from the base of the banana. So Angel's Wings, Bacopa, Bacopa, stand up, Bacopa. Not going to stand up. Then another African daisy. So this is gelato almond because, of course, we love to compare flowers to ice cream. So the African daisy, as I mentioned, it may not last all season long. It's fine. There'll be lots of fun flowers to throw in that bloom later into the summer when this one's no longer performing for me. But I love the colors that it gives me now. And that, let's see, I would tuck that in here. The purple, kind of purple underside of these petals. So white on the top, but purple from the bottom. And also kind of that electric violet or purple center of the daisies is all accenting the gorgeous foliage color of our banana. So we get these tucked in there, and now we've really got a nice contrast. And then as I was working with our container planting diva here in Lake Oswego, also known as Karen the Amazing, she suggested one more element. I asked her, what am I missing? As we looked at this combination, and we decided that we needed kind of a balancing foliage filler for the backside of the planting. And this is another helichrysum. So we looked at the lemon lime helichrysum, This little fun cutie here, another filler. And then this is our silver version of the helichrysum, also known as licorice plant. You can see their habits are a little bit different, but they're both like spreading, so they're kind of horizontal growth habit. They are not spillers, but they are kind of like fillers and weavers. Now, I know that doesn't rhyme with anything, but a weaver ends up kind of intermingling throughout the whole planting, where it might start over here with its roots, but be all over here, for example, with one of its ends as it sort of weaves its way through the container planting. And that ghostly kind of silver gray again brings us back to the colors of the white and pale, our angel's wings. And this is kind of adding to that moonlight. Oh, that's backwards. Adding to that moonlight element of enjoying this container after dark. So just popping those in to soften the edges. And as you can tell, I'm not actually planting this, so you would follow all of the other steps, including adding soil and fertilizer and putting the plants together and removing them from their plastic pots, etc., in which you'll see on the handout all of the steps taking you through how to actually plant up a container like this. But now our 16-inch pot, we have a thriller, which is a 2-gallon. So we're already starting with a bigger specimen thriller plant. Then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 additional plants in here. So that's eight total plants, one very large one, and 7 all 4-inch size, to give us that nice full combination that will just grow and fill out throughout the season, probably lasting us easily with this combination, maybe changing out the African daisies. This is going to go until Halloween, in which case I would think it would be time and money well spent. And that being said, more questions about the combinations, the specific plants on our tables today, or if you're just super inspired, come and see me today here at the Lake Oswego Garden Center, or find one of your favorite Dennis's 70s experts at your local garden center, and just get those containers planted. It's a great opportunity no matter the weather, and you'll be so glad you did. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Happy gardening.